Hello, I'm Scott Thomas and welcome to Soccer Basics for Soccer Parents. If you've played the sport and are familiar with the basics and the rules, this really isn't the class for you. This is for people whose children are playing the game now and they never played it and aren't familiar with the rules. So, let's dive right in to the soccer field itself. The professional soccer field is not one specific size like an NFL field is. For professional soccer, there's a range of width and length. The soccer field must be between 110 to 120 yards long and between 70 and 80 yards wide. For youth soccer, the field dimensions vary by age group as follows. U8 and lower, 25 by 35 yards long by 15 to 25 yards wide. For U10, it's 55 to 65 yards long by 35 to 45 yards wide. For U12, it's 70 to 80 yards long by 45 to 55 yards wide. For U14 and up to U19, it can be 100 to 130 yards long by 50 to 100 yards wide. It can be anywhere between 50 and 100 yards. So although it may not seem like a big difference in size between a field that is 110 by 70 versus 120 by 80, to the player it feels like a huge difference. Consider that difference measured in square footage. The smallest field is 69,300 square feet, while the biggest field is 86,400 square feet. The field dimensions are according to the official U.S. youth soccer standards. Some clubs and recreational leagues may choose to modify these field dimensions, and although we traditionally think of a soccer field as a rectangle, note that it's within regulations to have a field that is 25 long by 25 wide at the U8 level, or 100 yards long by 100 yards wide at the U14 level, which naturally would result in a perfectly square soccer field. I've never seen one, but you could make one and it would be totally legal. Now let's move on to how long they play. A professional match, not math, we're not doing professional math here, is 2 45-minute halves. For youth soccer, the length of the game varies by age group as follows. For U8 and lower, they typically play 4 10-minute quarters. For U10, 2 25-minute halves, U12, 2 30-minute halves, U14, 2 35-minute halves, U16, 2 40-minute halves, U18 and up through the pros, 2 45-minute halves. Now, I omitted including the length of the halftime break because it's at the discretion of the referee. There are some guidelines, but frequently the length of halftime in youth soccer is most frequently altered to accommodate the field schedule. In other words, if the field is booked all day and the 8 a.m. game or the 10 a.m. game started late or went into overtime, the easiest way to get that field schedule back on track is to shorten the halftime. So you may go to your son or daughter's soccer game and they may have a 5-7 minute halftime, and frequently that's just to try to get the field schedule back on track so that the people that show up for the 1 o'clock or the 3 o'clock game don't start 35-40 minutes late. Now let's talk about those white lines and boundaries. The long white lines that run along the sides of the field are the sideline, sometimes called the touch line, because when the ball goes over that line you can touch it. The lines at the end of the field are the end line, sometimes called the goal line. And in the four corners are the corner arcs. When a corner kick is awarded, the attacking team must place the ball within or touching the line of the corner arc. As long as some portion of the ball is within the corner arc, it's an acceptable placement of the ball. The entire ball doesn't have to be inside of that arc. And so here's a good picture of how they might place the ball. So you can see that the three balls that are touching, these here, they're touching the white lines, are all correct and legal placements of the ball, whereas the one that's completely outside the arc would be an incorrect placement. So let's move on and talk about the goal area. The goal area is a small rectangular box measuring 20 yards in width and 6 yards in depth. This is a place where goal kicks must be taken from inside this box. Any fouls that result in an indirect kick inside the penalty area have to be taken outside the box, and the 6-yard box also serves as a visual aid for the goalkeeper. So the goal area, which is more commonly called the 6-yard box, has two purposes according to the rules. First, when the attacking team kicks the ball over the defending team's end line, the defending team is awarded a goal kick. Goal kicks have to be taken from inside the 6-yard box. Second, if the defending team commits a minor infraction during the course of play and the attacking team is awarded an indirect free kick, all indirect free kicks must be taken from outside of that 6-yard box. In other words, you can't put the ball 3 yards from the goal and kick it in. And finally, the 6-yard box serves as a visual aid for the goalkeeper. Remember, the goalkeeper has their back to the goal during the match, and they're watching the ball and how the play develops in front of them. So being able to look down and see that 6-yard line, that box, gives you kind of a clue where you are in relation to the goal, because you want to stay to one side of the goal. You might want to be in the middle of the goal. It just serves as a visual aid for you. Now let's talk about the penalty area. This is the area where the goalkeeper can use his or her hands. It is 18 yards long by 44 yards wide. That's a great trick. A lot of people know how long the penalty area is. It's frequently called the 18-yard box, but nobody seems to know how wide it is. It's supposed to be 44 yards wide, and as it says on the slide, it's often called the 18-yard box. The penalty area is where the goalkeeper is allowed to use his hands. Outside the penalty area, the goalkeeper cannot use his hands, and he's just like any other field player. The same rules apply to him when he's outside the box. If a defending team commits a serious foul in the penalty area, the attacking team is awarded a direct free kick from the penalty spot. The penalty spot is directly in front of the goal, 12 yards away from it. When a direct kick is taken, all the players must be 10 yards away from the kick taker. Because the spot is 12 yards from the goal and the top of the penalty box is 18 yards, there's only 6 yards between the top of the penalty box and the penalty spot. And that's where the penalty arc comes in. The penalty arc is so that all players can position themselves at least 10 yards away from the kicker at the penalty spot. That's the whole point of that penalty arc, and the only really time that it comes into play. The center line and center circle. The center line divides the field in half lengthwise. This is important because a player cannot be considered to be in an offside position in their own half of the field. We'll get into offsides later on when we start talking about the rules, but it's just important to know that you can only be offside if you're in the attacking half of the field. If you're in your own half of the field or your defending half of the field, you can't be considered offside no matter where you are. Also, play starts from the center circle at the beginning of the game and at the start of the second half and after a goal has been scored. Because the kickoff is a direct kick, the circle ensures that players stay 10 yards away from the player or players taking the kick. That's why that center circle is there, so that people are 10 yards away from the kick. So, hopefully your local soccer field looks like this, with the white lines being used for proper full matches in this picture. In England, the field is called a soccer pitch, and you might hear some serious soccer people say things like, "See you on the pitch," or "We'll meet at the pitch," or "The pitch is in good shape today." So, the pitch, just another way to say soccer field.